The Marionette Maker. Art and story by Fleming. Blackened and burned, these lungs still breathe. Crippled and broken, these legs still carry. Severed and wounded, these hands build walls. Abandoned and decaying, this heart still bleeds. I should be dead. I want nothing more than for it to be over. Every breath is excruciating and my movements are no longer my own. I have not a heart that beats within me. Filled with the dread of this accursed melody, I wait, feet dangling inches from the floor. I begin to move to the rhythm of a song that rattles my very being, and I sway to the beat of the maker. Every delicate, jerking movement played back at me through the reflections on the blood-coated floor. I awoke in a large room with only a chair and many marionette wires dangling from the ceiling. The entire floor was covered in a thick, dark liquid that rhythmically dripped from above. I hung motionless, and the gentle sloshing of footsteps slowly drifted down a distant corridor. As it edged forward, I could make out a swaying, candlelit silhouette moving toward my room. As the figure drew closer, a whispering melody bounced and echoed through the empty corridor. It stopped at the doorway, staring at my limp body, and smiled with a delicious satisfaction that sent chills down my spine. I could feel knots turning in the pit of my stomach, and my throat tightened as the figure lumbered through the shallow water and into the room where I hung, immobile and helpless. It moved into the pale light of the room. Its grotesque features glistened as sections of the stitched flesh fell away from the thin, decaying form. A small octopus sat upon the figure, tentacles wrapped tightly around the creature's throat, its other limbs frantically attempting to reattach bits of flesh to an already exposed and bleeding ribcage. Limbs suspended from the canopy of wire and strings above. I began to scream as the thing pushed through the shallow water to where I swayed gently from the ceiling, the haunting melody resonating in a rasping growl. Next to me was a large table filled with weathered tools of different types and sizes, and another filled with needles and thread. It approached, stopping with its face inches from mine, the smell of copper and decay seeping from the creature's mouth, and I began to retch. Calmly stepping back, the creature sat firmly upon the chair in front of me and reached into a crate to pull out a small fabric doll with button eyes. Never moving its gaze from me, it plunged its sharp fingers deep into the fabric and began to pull out small amounts of stuffing and paper. My stomach turned as I watched this thin creature dismantle the doll, staring at me with sick satisfaction and accomplishment, grinning with its grotesque, stitched mouth. The octopus pulled itself onto the table and watched the figure in the chair. After a moment of observation, the octopus grabbed several objects off the table and used them to climb up my body and rip into my stomach. With each stab into the doll, so too did the octopus plunge into different sections of me. It was careful to imitate the actions of the thing sitting in the chair across from me. I was dissected. Each part of me it removed was placed inside a jar suspended from the ceiling, and a new part added in its place. After hours of agony with this small, slimy animal dismantling and replacing parts of my body, it finally finished its task and fell into the dark water below, collecting the remaining jars and scuttling away. The Marionette Maker stood. After stitching the doll it was working on closed and attached it to the marionette wires suspended from the ceiling. As it began puppeting the doll, I could feel my broken limbs creaking and snapping to match each movement. The Marionette Maker smiled as it filled the room with its melody, the smell of death wafting from the stitched gaps in its mouth. I don't know how much of myself is still me, nor can I comprehend how I am still living. I watch my heart beat and pulsate in a jar before me, yet I can still feel it, and it hurts. My eye was gouged from its socket, and my mouth has been stitched firmly shut. Much of my flesh has been sporadically replaced, and my body is now riddled with stitches. Every day the Marionette Maker and its friend return to torture me. It sings and I dance, my creaking joints cracking and disjointed with the movements to its song. I twitch and writhe with agony as my shattered body is forcefully puppeted into the wretched but elegant dance that is the marionette's waltz. Tattoo the skin and let it bleed, remove the tainted flesh and feast. Remove the eyes and give them buttons. Let them search the dark alone. Bind the wounds in linen, and let wounded limbs grow cold. Fill the mouth with cotton and stitch closed parched lips that dare not speak. Hang by the arms like a marionette, and let your strings bind you like chains.